I am 63 years old. I have worked with these two hands since I was 17. I have bled for this family. I have gone hungry so that others could eat. I have smiled through pain that most people would not survive. I have buried my pride more times than I can count, not because I was weak, but because I believed that love was worth more than pride. But the night my stepson stood in the doorway of the house I built, the house I paid for, the house where I raised him like my own blood, and told me I could not come inside, that was the night something in me finally went still, not angry, not broken, just still, and I turned around, walked to my car in the cold, and sat there in the dark for a long time. I did not cry, I did not shout, I did not call anyone, I just sat there and I made a decision. The next morning, I walked back to that front door and I knocked. When he opened it, I held out a plain white envelope and said nothing. He looked at it, he looked at me, and then he laughed. That laugh I had heard so many times before. The one that said he thought he had already won. Finally, he said, "You get it, old man." He took the envelope from my hand. He was still smiling when he opened it. And then the smile disappeared. My name is Gerald Hutchins. Most people who know me just call me Jerry. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the second of 5 children. My father worked at a steel mill. My mother cleaned houses. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and my parents made sure we understood the value of that. I learned early that a man's worth is not measured in what he owns. It is measured in what he gives. I carried that with me my whole life. I spent 31 years working as a civil engineer. Bridges, roads, municipal buildings. I designed things meant to last, meant to hold weight, meant to endure. There is a bridge 2 towns over that still carries traffic every single day, and my name is on the original blueprints. That meant something to me. That still means something to me. I married my first wife, Carol, when I was 27. We had 1 daughter together, my Angela, my heart, my greatest achievement in this world. Angela was born with her mother's eyes and her grandmother's stubbornness, and she grew up to be a woman I am proud of every single day. Carol passed away from cancer when Angela was just 11 years old. That was the hardest year of my life. I will not spend much time there because even now, all these years later, it still costs me something to talk about it. For 7 years after Carol passed, it was just Angela and me. I worked. I cooked bad dinners that she pretended to love. I drove her to school, to ballet, to birthday parties. I helped with homework I sometimes didn't understand. We were a team. A small, imperfect, grieving team, but a team. Then I met Dorothy. Dorothy came into my life quietly, the way good things often do. She was a nurse. She had a warm laugh and a kind face, and she made me feel, for the first time in years, like maybe the chapter wasn't over. Like maybe there was still something worth reading. Dorothy had a son. His name was Marcus. He was 9 years old when we met. A quiet, watchful boy with dark eyes that seemed to be always calculating something. I did not think much of it at the time. Children can be guarded with new people. That is natural. That is understandable. Dorothy and I married 2 years later. Angela was 18 by then, just starting college. She was gracious about the whole thing. She wanted me to be happy. She told me so the night before the wedding, sitting on the porch with me. Both of us looking up at the stars, the way we used to do when she was small. "Dad," she said, "you have given me everything. You deserve something for yourself." I squeezed her hand and told her she would always be first. Marcus was 11 when Dorothy and I married, and I decided from day one that I would love him like my own. I want to be fair to Marcus. I want to tell this story honestly, the way it actually happened, because he deserves that much even after everything. He was not an easy child, but he was not a bad one either, not at first. His father had left when Marcus was 4, left Dorothy for another woman moved to another state, sent birthday cards for 2 years, and then stopped even that. Marcus had grown up watching his mother work double shifts, watching her struggle, watching her be strong and sad at the same time. That shapes a child, that leaves marks. I understood that. I tried to reach him. I coached his little league team for 3 seasons, even though I knew almost nothing about baseball. I studied the rulebook at night like I was preparing for an exam. Marcus never thanked me for that, but I remember once, he hit a triple and looked up from second base searching for my face in the crowd. I was standing and cheering so hard I nearly knocked over the woman beside me. He didn't smile, but he looked. That was enough for me then. I paid for his school trips, his new shoes, his first laptop, his driving lessons. His prom, I never made him call me Dad. I never pressured him to feel something he didn't feel. I just showed up. Every day, I showed up. But Marcus carried something inside him that I never quite reached. A coldness, a calculation. As he got older, it became more obvious. He started to see me not as a father figure, not even as a stepfather, but as a resource. A wallet, a means to an end. I told myself I was imagining it. Dorothy told me I was imagining it. I was not imagining it. Part 4. The house 12 years ago. I built the house. I say built. I mean I designed it myself and hired the contractors and made every decision from the foundation to the roof. 4 bedrooms. A big kitchen with a window that faces east, so the morning light comes in like a gift. A porch wide enough for 2 rocking chairs and a table between them. A yard with 2 oak trees that I planted as saplings. It was the house I had always imagined, the house I wanted to grow old in. Dorothy loved it. I remember the day we walked through the finished rooms for the first time, and she pressed both hands to her cheeks and cried the good kind of crying, the overwhelmed kind. I put my arm around her and felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Marcus was 16 when we moved in. He got the largest guest bedroom. I painted it whatever color he wanted. He chose dark gray, which I thought was a little grim for a teenager's room, but I kept that opinion to myself. His name was never on anything. The mortgage was mine. The deed was mine. Every payment for 12 years came from my retirement savings, my pension, my work. But over time, slowly, the way rust forms, Marcus began to act as if the house was his. He moved back in after college, saying it was temporary. Temporary became 2 years. 2 years became 4. He never paid rent. He never contributed to utilities. He brought his girlfriend, Priya, to live there without asking. Just announced it one evening as if he were informing me of the weather. I did not throw them out. I am not that kind of man, but something was shifting. I could feel it. Dorothy and I started arguing. Small arguments at first, about Marcus's behavior, about boundaries, about the future. Dorothy always defended him. Always. And I always backed down because I did not want to be the man who drove a wedge between a mother and her son. Looking back, that patience of mine may have been mistaken for something else. It may have been mistaken for weakness. Dorothy got sick 18 months ago. A stroke. Not catastrophic. She survived. She recovered most of her movement. But it changed her. It slowed her down, and it frightened all of us in different ways. It frightened me because I loved her and could not bear the thought of losing another wife. It frightened Marcus in a different way, a way that, at the time, I did not fully understand. After Dorothy came home from the hospital, Marcus started taking more interest in the household, more interest in conversations about finances. He started asking questions, careful, indirect questions about the house, about Dorothy's name on things, about what would happen in the future. I did not see it then. I see it now. Dorothy, weakened and frightened after her stroke, began to lean on Marcus in a way she never had before. And Marcus, I say this with sadness, not with anger, used that leaning. He started filling her head with doubts. Small ones, quiet ones. Mom, Jerry's pension isn't going to last forever. Mom, have you thought about what the house situation looks like long term? Mom, you should talk to someone about your rights, her rights, as if I had ever done a single thing to violate them. As if 31 years of my life had not been laid at the feet of this family. Dorothy started to pull away from me. Not dramatically, not all at once, but the warmth changed, the ease changed. We stopped sitting on the porch together in the evenings. She stopped reaching for my hand. I asked her once, just once, what was wrong. She said, "Nothing, Jerry. I'm just tired." And I believed her. Because I wanted to believe her, because the alternative was something I was not ready to face. It was a Tuesday night in November. I had been at the hospital, not for Dorothy, but for my own routine checkup. My doctor had found something in my blood work 6 weeks earlier, and there had been a series of tests since then. I had not told anyone. I did not want to worry Dorothy while she was still recovering. I did not want to burden the house with more anxiety. I drove home in the dark, tired and cold, thinking about nothing in particular except a cup of hot tea and my bed. When I pulled into the driveway, the porch light was on. I could see light in the windows. I walked up the path and tried the front door. It was locked. I knocked. I waited. Marcus opened the door. He was wearing a t-shirt and holding a glass of something cold. He looked at me the way you look at a stranger who has come to the wrong address. And then he leaned against the doorframe and said, "Sorry, Jerry, it's not a good time tonight." I stared at him. "Excuse me," I said, "we've got family here." He said, "Mom's resting. Priya's family flew in. It's kind of crowded, and honestly, it would just be better if you came back tomorrow. I want you to understand something. I want you to really understand it. This was my house. My name was on the deed. I had designed the very door he was leaning against. I had planted the 2 trees on either side of that porch. I had paid every mortgage payment for 12 years. My clothes were inside. My photographs were inside. My wife was inside. And this young man, this boy I had coached in baseball and bought laptops for and driven to prom, was telling me it was not a good time. I looked at him for a long moment. Something inside me, something old and tired and very, very done, went completely quiet. "All right," I said, and I turned around. I heard the door close behind me. I heard it lock. I walked to my car. I got inside. I sat in the dark driveway of my own house in the cold, and I breathed. I did not call Angela. I did not call the police. I did not bang on the door. I sat there until I was certain of what I needed to do. And then I drove to a hotel. I have stayed in hundreds of hotel rooms over the years, for work mostly. Concrete floors and budget furniture, and the particular loneliness of rooms that exist only to be slept in and left. That night, sitting on the edge of a hotel bed at nearly 10 o'clock, I felt something I had not felt since the year Carol died. I felt completely alone, but there was something else underneath the loneliness, something quieter and harder, a clarity, because there is a moment, if you are lucky, or maybe unlucky, when life strips away everything you have been telling yourself and leaves you with just the truth. The truth was this: for years I had been so afraid of being seen as a bad stepfather, so afraid of causing pain, so afraid of disrupting the peace, that I had allowed something deeply wrong to grow inside my own home. I had made excuses. I had looked away. I had called patience what was actually surrender. And in doing so, I had not protected anyone, not Dorothy, not myself, not even Marcus, because no one is helped by being allowed to become the worst version of themselves. I opened my phone and I called my daughter. Angela answered on the second ring, even though it was late, because that is who Angela is. "Dad, what's wrong? I need you to come see me tomorrow," I said. "I need your help with something." She came, and we talked until 2 in the morning, and by the time she left, I had made my plan. The next morning, I went to my lawyer's office. I want to pause here Because I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, finally, he's going to get revenge. Finally, he's going to take the house back and throw them all out. But that is not what I did. What I did was both simpler and, I think, more profound than that. My lawyer's name is Robert Ellison. I have known him for 22 years. He is a calm, precise man who has handled every legal matter in my life since I was in my 40s. He listened to what I told him. He asked a few questions, and then he helped me prepare 2 documents. I placed those documents in a plain white envelope. I sealed it. I drove back to the house. It was 9:30 in the morning. Marcus's car was in the driveway. I knocked on the door of my own house, and waited. Marcus answered. He was still in his pajamas, slightly disheveled, looking like a man who had slept well without a single troubled thought. When he saw me, something flickered across his face, not guilt, not shame, just mild irritation, and then amusement. "Jerry," he said, with that half-smile I had grown to know so well, "come to make a scene." "No," I said. I held out the envelope. "I came to give you this." He looked at it. He looked at me. He took it from my hand with the confidence of someone who already knows what's inside, who has already written the ending to the story in his head. "Finally," he said, and his smile widened, "you get it, old man." He thought it was a deed transfer. He thought he had convinced himself, or perhaps Dorothy had told him, that I had finally broken, that the night locked out in the cold had been the last straw, and now I was surrendering. He thought I was handing him the house. He opened the envelope. He read the first document. I watched his face. I watched the smile stay for 2 full seconds, the momentum of certainty, the smile that doesn't know yet that the ground has moved, and then I watched it fall. The first document was not a deed transfer. It was a letter, written by me, typed up cleanly by Robert, signed and notarized. A full accounting, 12 years of mortgage payments, utilities, renovations, maintenance. Every dollar I had put into that house. The total, at the bottom of the page, was $412,000. Below that total was a single line. "This amount represents my sole financial contribution to the property located at address. The property remains in my name as sole owner. I am providing this accounting as a formal record." The second document was a notice, again, properly prepared, properly notarized. It was a notice to vacate, 30 days, addressed to Marcus Jerome Webb and Priya Ann, and Marcus read it twice. Then he looked up at me, and for the first time since he was a boy, standing on second base, searching for my face, for the first time in years, I saw something real in his eyes. "Shock, real, unguarded shock. You're kicking me out," he said. "I'm exercising my legal right as the owner of this property." I said, "You have 30 days. Mom, your mother," I said quietly, "will not be asked to leave. This is her home as long as she wants it. But my home is no longer available to people who lock me out of it." He stared at me. Something was working behind his eyes, the old calculation, trying to find an angle, trying to reassign blame. "You can't do this," he said. "Marcus," I said, "I already have." And I walked inside my house. My house. Dorothy was in the kitchen. She was standing at the counter with a cup of tea in both hands, and when she saw my face, she set the cup down slowly, carefully, like she was buying herself a moment. "Jerry," she said. "Dorothy," I said. We looked at each other across the kitchen with the east-facing window, the one that fills with morning light every single day. "He showed me the notice," she said. "I know. How could you do this?" And here is where I could have been angry. Here is where a lesser version of me, or maybe just a version of me from 20 years ago, would have raised his voice, would have pointed fingers, would have listed every grievance in order. But I was 63 years old, and I was tired of performing. "Dorothy," I said, "do you know where I slept last night?" She looked down at her cup. Do you know that your son locked me out of my own house? Do you know I sat in my car in the driveway in the cold before I drove to a hotel? Do you know that I have been going to the hospital for tests for 6 weeks, and I have not told you because you were still recovering, and I didn't want you to worry? She looked up at that. What tests? She said. Her voice changed completely, and I told her. 6 weeks earlier, my doctor had found an irregularity in my heart. Not immediately life-threatening, but serious enough that I had been undergoing testing. The final results had come in 2 days before the night Marcus locked me out. I was going to need surgery, a valve replacement, major surgery, the kind that requires recovery time, that requires care, that requires, above all, a stable home. Dorothy set down her cup and covered her mouth with her hand. Jerry, she whispered, I have been protecting this family. I said, from this information, for 6 weeks I have been carrying this alone because I did not want to be a burden while you were healing. And while I was doing that, your son was working to push me out of my own home. The silence in that kitchen was the loudest thing I have ever heard. I didn't know, she said. I know you didn't, I said. But Dorothy, I need you to think about what you did know, what you watched happen, what you allowed. She began to cry. Not delicately. The real kind of crying. The kind that comes from somewhere deep, and knows it, has been waiting a long time. I'm sorry, she said. Jerry, I'm so sorry. I know. I said, I know you are. And I put my arms around her because she was still my wife, and I still loved her, not in spite of the hurt, but somehow alongside it, the way love often has to operate in real life. Not clean and perfect, but real. Marcus appeared in the kitchen doorway 20 minutes later. He had put on proper clothes. He had washed his face. He looked, for the first time in a long time, like a boy instead of a man playing at being a man. He looked at his mother, crying at the kitchen table with my hand on hers. He looked at me. Priya went to her cousins. He said quietly, She thought we should talk alone. That was considerate of her. I said. He pulled out a chair and sat down. He put his hands flat on the table and looked at them. I didn't know about your heart, he said. No, I said. You didn't, I thought. He stopped, swallowed. I thought if I could just get the house. Why? I asked. Not accusingly, genuinely. Why did you want it so badly? He was quiet for a long moment, and then he said something that surprised me. That surprised me enough that I have thought about it almost every day since. Because I was scared, he said. Because Dad left and he never came back, and I watched Mom struggle for years, and I thought, if there's a house, if there's something solid, then at least we can't lose everything. At least there's something that can't just leave. The kitchen was very still. Marcus, I said. He looked up. I was never going to leave, I said. In 30 years, not once did I look at this family and think about leaving. That is not who I am. I stayed through your worst years. I stayed through arguments and silences, and every time you looked at me like I was in the way. I stayed because I love your mother, and because I chose to call this home. He closed his eyes. You wanted the house, I said. But Marcus, I was already giving you something worth more than a house. I was giving you constancy, presence, the thing your father never gave you, and you were so afraid of losing it that you tried to take the only version of it you could hold in your hands. He didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice was very quiet. I'm sorry, Jerry, he said. It was the first time in all the years I had known him, that he had called me by my name and meant it as a term of closeness rather than dismissal. It was the first time the word sorry from his mouth felt like it had weight. I know, I said. Angela arrived that afternoon. I had called her the night before, and she had driven 4 hours without hesitation. She walked in the front door with a bag of groceries because that is Angela. She can't come to a crisis without bringing food. And she took one look at the 3 of us sitting in the living room and said, okay, what did I miss? I love my daughter more than I can say. She sat with us for 3 hours. She listened. She asked questions, practical ones, emotional ones. She is a good mediator, my Angela. She has her mother's ability to sit with uncomfortable things without flinching. At one point she turned to Marcus and said, in a voice that was kind but completely clear, "Marcus, my dad built this house. He paid for this house. He raised you in this house. And you locked him out of it. I need you to understand what that means, not as a legal fact, but as a human one." Marcus nodded. His jaw was tight, but his eyes were honest. "I understand," he said. "Do you?" she said. "Because understanding it and actually carrying it, those are different things. And my dad is about to go into surgery, and he is going to need people around him who are actually in his corner. Are you capable of being that?" I watched something shift in Marcus's face. The final piece of the old armor coming down. "Yes," he said. "I want to be that." Angela looked at me. I nodded. "Then we figure it out," she said. Together. The surgery was 6 weeks later. It was a long operation, nearly 5 hours. Angela was there. Dorothy was there. And Marcus drove Dorothy to the hospital and sat in the waiting room the entire time. Bria brought food. They waited together. I am told, because I was unconscious, obviously, that when the surgeon came out and said the surgery had gone well, Dorothy grabbed Marcus's arm and cried, and he held her, and they both held each other. Angela told me that later, and I had to look away for a moment. Recovery was slow. 8 weeks of careful movement, of tiredness I had never experienced before, of feeling like a passenger in my own body. I slept in the downstairs bedroom during that time because the stairs were too much. Dorothy brought me tea. Marcus quietly, without being asked, took over the yard, mowed the grass, raked the leaves, fixed a gutter that had been pulling loose since the summer. He never made a production of it, never asked for credit. He just did it. And I watched him from the window. This young man I had tried to love for so many years, finally becoming someone worth loving back. One morning, a Saturday in February, cold and gray, he brought 2 cups of coffee to the living room where I was sitting. He handed me one and sat down in the chair across from me. We didn't talk for a while, just sat there with our coffees. Then he said, "My dad called me last month, first time in 11 years. I looked at him. He wanted to reconnect." Marcus said, and I could hear the quotation marks around the word, the years of hurt packed inside them. I told him I was busy. I told him I had family I needed to take care of. He looked at his cup. "I meant you," he said. I didn't say anything right away. I let it sit. Then I said, "Thank you, Marcus." He nodded. We drank our coffee. That was enough. Sometimes that is everything. I want to tell you something I have not told anyone except Angela and my lawyer. The notice to vacate, the 30-day notice in that envelope, had a second page. Marcus never read the second page. He saw the first page, the accounting, the notice, and came to his conclusion. He never turned it over. On the second page was an addendum, signed by me, witnessed by Robert. It stated that in the event Marcus Webb demonstrated, over the following 12 months, genuine responsibility and care for this household and its members, the notice would be considered rescinded, and a formal acknowledgement of his right to remain as a long-term resident, not an owner, but a resident, would be prepared. I was never trying to destroy him. I was trying to wake him up, and it worked. Not the way I planned, not cleanly, not painlessly, not without real damage being done on all sides. But it worked. 12 months later, I called Robert and told him to prepare the addendum document. Marcus has been a different presence in this house. Not perfect, Marcus will never be perfect, and neither will I, but present, honest, changed in some real and lasting way. He knows about the second page now. I told him on the 1-year anniversary of the morning I knocked on my own front door and handed him that envelope. He sat very still for a long time after I told him. Then he said, You gave me a way back even when you were serving me out. Yes, I said. Why? Because I'm your father, I said. I'm not your biological father. I didn't raise you from a baby. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but I chose this family and I chose you, and that choice doesn't come with conditions. It just comes with consequences when the line gets crossed. He nodded slowly, and the line, he said, was the door. The line, I said, was the door. I am 63 years old. I have a repaired heart, literally. The surgeon put a new valve where the old one was failing, and now it works better than it has in years. I feel that as a kind of poetry, not a forced kind, just the quiet, accidental kind that life occasionally offers if you are paying attention. Dorothy and I take walks in the evening again. We sit on the porch again. She reaches for my hand again, and I hold it, and we watch the yard. The 2 oak trees I planted as saplings, which are now tall enough to make real shade in the summer. Marcus and Priya are still here. They got engaged last spring. There will be a wedding in the fall. I have been asked by Marcus to walk with him in the ceremony, not to give anyone away, but as a symbol of something he wanted acknowledged. I said yes. Angela calls every Sunday without fail. She is bringing her partner to meet the family in the spring, and I have been practicing being a relaxed and uncomplicated father of an adult, which is harder than it sounds. I am, on balance, a happy man, but I want to leave you with something. Something I have been turning over in my mind since all of this happened, because I think it matters. People talk about respect like it is something that gets demanded, like you can stand on your record, your years, your sacrifice, your service, and expect it to be recognized automatically. It doesn't work that way. Respect is not owed, but it is earned, and more importantly, it is taught. By how you carry yourself, by where you draw your lines, by what you accept and what you refuse. For too many years, I accepted things I should have refused. Not out of love. Love was real. Love was there, but out of fear. Fear of being the bad guy. Fear of causing pain. Fear of being the stepfather who broke the family apart. And in that fear, I taught the wrong lesson. I taught the people around me that Gerald Hutchins had no lines, that his patience was infinite, that you could push, and he would just absorb it and stay quiet and smile. The night Marcus locked me out, I finally taught the real lesson, not with anger, not with cruelty, with an envelope and a notarized document and 33 words. You have 30 days, because love without limits is not love. It is surrender in love's clothing, and silence, true silence, the silence of a man who has decided rather than a man who has given up, that silence can be the loudest thing in the room. The envelope didn't say, I hate you, you're not my son, get out and never come back. The envelope said, I matter. This house matters, my presence matters, and I have been here, quietly mattering, for longer than you noticed. And when Marcus finally read that, not the words, but the meaning underneath them, something in him woke up. That is what I hope you take away from this. Not a strategy for revenge, not a lesson in legal maneuvering, but this: you cannot love people well by making yourself invisible. You cannot protect a family by swallowing everything that hurts you. Kindness is not the same as silence, and strength is not the same as noise. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hand someone an envelope and let them feel the weight of what they almost lost. And sometimes, if you are lucky, if they are capable, if love is still somewhere in the room, they open it, and they come back. If this story touched your heart, if you have ever been the quiet one, the one who gave everything and asked for nothing, the one who stayed even when it cost you, then this story was for you. You are not weak for being patient, but you are also not required to be invisible. Know your worth, hold your lines, love loudly enough that the people around you understand what they would lose. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, hit the bell, and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. There are quiet people in your life who are carrying things you cannot see, Maybe this story will help them find their envelope.